Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into a massive problem that so many businesses face. It's this: how do you actually turn knowing about a risk into doing something about it? We're often fantastic at making lists of what could go wrong, but we stumble when it comes to stopping those things from happening. Well, we're going to break down a framework that's designed to fix exactly that. So picture this. Your team has put in the hours. You've had the workshops, the spreadsheets are filled out, you've identified all the big, scary risks. And then that question hangs in the air, right? You hear it in every boardroom. Okay, so what now? And that right there is the moment where all that great work can just grind to a halt. And this is why that question is so incredibly important. A whopping 70% of major projects in big companies, we're talking AI rollouts, digital transformations, the big stuff, they just don't deliver what they promised. And get this, it's usually not because the tech was bad. It's a failure in the process. It's a failure to act on the risks we already knew were there. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with a problem that, let's be honest, we all recognize. Then we'll get into why this action gap exists. After that, I'm going to introduce you to a really powerful framework called Integrated Process Excellence, or IPE for short. We'll see exactly how it works, what the after picture looks like, and how you can actually start building your own path to resilience. Okay, so let's kick things off with a scene that I bet is way too familiar for a lot of you. It's the problem of shelfware. Those beautifully crafted risk reports that just end up sitting on a shelf, collecting digital dust instead of driving any real change. And you can just feel the frustration, right? The risk register is packed. The heat maps have all the right shades of red and yellow. But then you look at what people are actually doing day to day, and it's business as usual. Nothing's different. The risk was put on paper, but it never made it into the real world. And this brings us right to the heart of the matter, the core issue we're tackling today, the identification to action gap. It's that huge, often overlooked space between knowing something could go wrong and actually building a system to stop it. Awareness, it turns out, just isn't enough. So what does this gap look like in the wild? Well, there are some really predictable patterns. See if any of these sound familiar. Risks get logged, but they're never actually connected to a specific step in a process. We assign an action, Bob's on it, but that action isn't actually built into the workflow Bob uses every day. And the big one? We only ever react after something bad has already happened. This isn't a problem of people not caring, it's a problem of a broken structure. And I think this quote just sums it up perfectly. Traditional risk management is great at answering that first question, what could go wrong? But then it kind of leaves you hanging. Integrated Process Excellence, IPE, is built from the ground up to answer that second, all-important question. Okay, so what are we going to do about it? So let's properly introduce the solution. Integrated Process Excellence. And I know it sounds like another corporate buzzword, but stick with me. It's a super practical, hands-on framework. Think of it as the actual bridge that is designed to get you across that action gap we've been talking about. So yeah, here's the formal definition, but let's just cut through that. The most important words there are deployment framework. It's not about diagnosis, it's about action. It takes an abstract idea like risk and gives you the tools to weld real, concrete controls right into your daily operations. And this part is huge, it lets you measure if they're actually working. All right, so you're probably wondering, how does this thing actually work? Well, the real power of IPS is in this simple but really elegant 5-layer model. Let's walk through how these layers stack up to build something incredibly robust. See, each layer builds on the one before it. First, you connect every single risk to a specific part of a process. No more free-floating risks. Second, you bake the controls right into that workflow, not some separate checklist people ignore. Third, and this is key, you measure the things that give you an early warning. Fourth, you get everyone on the same page from the top floor to the front line. And finally, you build a feedback loop, so you're constantly getting smarter. Now, I really want to double-click on layer 3, causal measurement, because this is a total game changer. This is what moves you from just reacting when things go wrong to having a kind of early warning system. And it does this using 3 specific kinds of variables. First up, you've got key IVs, or key input variables. The easiest way to think about these is as the ingredients you're putting into your process. Is the data you're starting with clean? Are the raw materials up to spec? If you monitor these inputs, you can catch a problem at the very, very beginning, before it has a chance to ruin the whole batch. Next are the KPVs,
key process variables. Now, if KIVs are your ingredients, KPVs are about what's happening during the cooking. Is the machine running at the right speed? Are people following that critical safety check? KPVs give you a live look inside your process to see if your controls are actually being followed.
And finally, you have KOVs, key output variables. This is the taste test at the end. Did the final product come out right? These are the results that prove whether your entire strategy worked. But here's the real magic. When you connect your KIVs to your KPVs to your KOVs, you create this incredible data chain that shows you exactly how your inputs affect your outcomes. So when you bring all of this together, risk management doesn't just get a little bit better. No, it fundamentally transforms. Let's look at the real, tangible difference that this kind of framework makes.
I mean, this side-by-side says it all, doesn't it? On the left, that's the old world. It's passive. Risks are just sitting in a log, actions are floating around unconnected to anything, and you basically measure success by counting your failures. But on the right, with IPE, everything is active, it's connected. Risks are tied to processes, actions are tied to that data chain, and you're measuring things to prevent failures from ever happening in the first place.
And a new approach like this needs a new tool. You know, traditional risk analysis was always about one thing, what could go wrong. But in the complex, fast-moving world we live in now, especially with AI, that's not enough. You also have to understand what drives success. So IPE uses a modern approach that lets you analyze both, so you can learn just as much from your wins as you do from your losses. Okay, so this probably all sounds great, but the big question is, how do you actually do it? Well, the great news is that this isn't some vague idea. There's a very clear, actionable roadmap to get you from where you are today to a place of real operational resilience. The whole journey is broken down into 4 pretty manageable phases. You start by just mapping the risks you already have to your processes. Then you design the controls and that all-important measurement system. After that, you roll it out and get everyone on board. And finally, it just becomes a living, breathing part of how you get better over time. It's a structured deployment, not a big bang nightmare. And here is something that is incredibly cool and efficient about this. You're not just fixing an internal problem. By doing this, you're actually building the exact system you need to satisfy all these major governance and compliance rules. So whether you're dealing with the NIST AI framework, the EU AI Act, or ISO standards, IPE gives you the real operational proof that you are managing your risks responsibly. And this really brings us to the core mindset shift. The goal here isn't to get better at putting out fires. The goal is to build an organization that runs on proactive intelligence so that those fires never even start. That's what it really means to move from just being aware to actually taking action. Which brings us right back to where we started, to that one critical question. After you've identified the risk, what do you do next? And I think after all this, the answer is pretty clear. You build the bridge. You put a real, structured operational framework in place to turn what you know into what you do day in and day out. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.